a show. It's a podcast show. Welcome to the Julie Cross Podcast Show. Empowering, energising and entertaining. Hi friends, Julie Cross here. Welcome to the podcast show. Now, I may have done some of this journey with you before, but I think it's worth revisiting because we're all going to be entering the ocean of grief, as I call it, at different stages in our life, and some of you may have entered it since we spoke last. So I just want to do a bit of a reflection and around that journey of grief and some of the lessons that I've had along the way, as it may be helpful to you or somebody that you know, because one thing is for sure about life, at some point we will all be experiencing the loss of somebody and entering that ocean of grief. And we can't escape it. We'll all have to do it at some point. So best we surrender to the journey. And for me, 10 years on from my husband dying, this is how it feels for me. And maybe it does for you too. For me and my grief, the best way I can describe it is that we all are all in an ocean of grief. We will all enter it at some point. All of us that have lost somebody will be in this ocean. And when we first get thrown in, we may enter it at different places, different kinds of conditions, depending on the circumstances surrounding our loss. Perhaps the sea was much more treacherous for those that are grieving children than those losing a loved one at the end of a life well lived. But either way, still an ocean of grief. And when we first enter, well, it feels like it's so hard to keep our head above the water, especially in those particularly treacherous areas. We can't negotiate the waves very well. We are thrown around, we are battered and feel like we are drowning. And there are times we just wish that we would, feel like giving up so that we didn't have to keep on fighting because we just get so tired. We get so tired of it. But we have to keep on and we keep on. And then some people offer us a life buoy. And sometimes we accept it in the form of help. Maybe it's counselling or support from a loved one or a meal dropped in. It gives us some moments of rest and peace. But at this stage, when they leave the support goes too still, the life buoy goes too. So we find ourselves still floundering. And then in time we realise that we actually have our own board, and this may be in the form of ongoing support from each other. Others that we love that we must go on for, that give us hope, or just the realisation that we have to keep on and that we are worth fighting for. And so we hop on this board. We are clumsy at first and fall off a few times, and then we take a rest. Perhaps we even start paddling to calmer seas. But in the early stages, we still aren't so good with this board. We fall off, we crash, we get tired of trying to stay on. And this is perhaps the board of hope. But as time goes on, we do get better at it. We rest more. We have a little more peace. We get better at keeping our heads above the water. You see, we never leave the ocean of grief. And every now and again, a big wave of grief will come and we will get dumped again. And this can happen when you least expect it. It's on the 11th of November, which is my husband's anniversary of when he passed away. I usually schedule some grieving time in. But this year I thought I'd do something different. On the coast for a weekend with other families and then work scheduled. But grief said to me today, I won't be scheduled in. It's slid around or avoided or not looked at. It happened while sitting with my son at his new high school for an orientation day. I looked around at the dads sitting there and then the wave slammed into me. I want my husband to be sitting here with me, I thought. Oh, sure, he is in spirit, but I want him here holding my hand, God damn it. I want him here this afternoon. And when the kids come home, I want help with that. I want him here to celebrate milestones reached and help me to pay the goddamn bills. I want him here to laugh with me and to cry with me. I want to hear him call me Mouse one more time. I want him to take Jacko to rugby and to do the driving lessons with him. I want him here to love me. I miss him and I miss having a husband. And today I'm going to allow myself to surrender to the grief and the tears because it is today they showed up. And I'm not asking you to cheer me up. I feel like I want to be sad and I deserve to be sad. And I reckon we're all allowed to just go there every now and again because it is sad for us. Damn it, it is sad. And so allow yourself that sadness, allow that wave of grief to wash over you because, all these years on, it will still hit me at different times. And I don't stay under for as long. I find I can get up a lot quicker these days. And that happens with time because we're getting stronger as we go. And when people tell me I'm courageous, I really appreciate that, maybe what they see. But all I can say is that for the courage that you see from the outside looking in, well, from the inside looking out, I still feel like a little girl and I feel like I've been thrown out of the toddler pool into the ocean with the grown-ups and playing in very big waves. And I'm really not sure how to do it. And so in the end, we really are just just fumbling away, doing the best that we can. So I guess for every person that you see as being courageous through grief, it doesn't mean that vulnerability, fear and sadness is absent. It means they're acting despite all of that being present. And it is okay to be sad sometimes, so take a little time to do just that. And so with time, we are better able to negotiate those waves, and we even stand up tall and proud on this board of hope that is our life. And then perhaps one day we can just let the grief gently lap around us, under us, and just every now and again sometimes over us, and know that we can enjoy the view, the ride, the sights, the laughter, the joy, and the people that are here with us in and around our grief. And like all oceans, they can sometimes be rough and treacherous. However, they can also be calm, exciting and beautiful. So if you are going through some grief, then please, know that you are not alone and that you're sharing it with so many of us, and that there is hope and lightness and laughter and wonderful views in amongst it. And so, I'm approaching now 11 years since we lost Flash, and that's 15 years since he had his stroke, which was, I guess, my first grieving. So I just wanted to share, I guess, a tick-off box of some of the things that I've learned in finishing this podcast around grief. The first thing I learned is that grief, it doesn't come with a tick-off box. Everybody will do it differently. When you don't know what to do for somebody who is grieving, and I found this, I learnt this really big lesson. If you don't know what to do when somebody else is grieving, just ask them what they need. What is it I can do for you right now? Because I tell you, that is preferable than to disappearing altogether because you didn't know what to say. I also found that your length of grieving or showing people that you're sad is in no way related to how much you loved and missed them. You still love and miss them when you are happy. I don't think it is time that heals grief, because some people never seem to be able to move through it. I think we grow through grief if you allow yourself to grow and know that you're worth growing for. We learn better skills to ride the waves of grief, and then we fall again, and then we get better at getting up again. I learned that often the grief is not about the person you lost. Flash is probably having a lovely time. No more pain, captain of the rugby team, because it is played in heaven, Still able to watch and enjoy us, I do believe, and know that we can all catch up again. So it's not it is more what I am left with, perhaps, that is where the pain comes from. All of that doing autism without him, my boys not having their dad, missing his love and support, missing him, feeling ripped off that I don't have the love of my life here, watching how the change in your family dynamic changes and your friendships change. Perhaps that really is, a deep part of the grieving as well. I've learned that you can still grieve wearing sequins, and why shouldn't you? Grief won't drown or be numbed, won't be drowned or numbed. People seem to want to medicate grief and sadness, but I don't think it works. I did try to drown it with wine, I can tell you that for sure, and champagne. But of course you just still wake up with the pain of grief and have to do it with a hangover. I do relate to wailing with grief. I know there's some countries that really wail and get their grieving out, like physically wailing, and I really actually get that. I think it's a very healthy thing to do. I found that many people are very uncomfortable with grief and sadness, but that is not about you. So don't worry about that. It is not about you. It is probably about some grief in them that wasn't given space or allowed to be looked at. I learned that you are not being negative when you're being sad. You are simply being sad. So you don't need to apologise for that. If you don't do your emotions, they'll do you. You do not need to feel guilty about feeling happy when you are grieving. And I think this is the big one. We can see quite clearly that we have a right to be sad when we lose someone, but we actually can't see so clearly that we still have a right to be happy. And so allow ourselves our happiness. People love to talk about living in the moment. Well, guess what, all you positive peeps? Sometimes in that moment you are sad, sometimes devastated, sometimes happy, sometimes vulnerable, sometimes overwhelmed, and sometimes ecstatic. So allow yourself your moments. And although time doesn't heal grief, I do notice that as time goes on, you are able to remember more of the good times, and you can do it with a lighter, brighter kind of missing. It will be the first thing you think about every day when you wake up and every night before you go to sleep. And then one day it will be the second thing. And then one day it will be the third thing. and so the healing starts. Never forget that you still have a right to your joy during your grieving. I believe sometimes that we exasperate our grief by analysing death. Death is inevitable. By talking about whether it is justified, it has happened, so now it just is. So we can carry on about whether it is justified, but it has happened. So don't over-identify with how it happened or when it happened or whether it should have happened, because everybody will die somehow and everybody will keep dying somehow. It is one thing for sure that people will die. There is no getting out of it. You can't avoid it. It is a fact of life. There will be no set order. There never was. There is no set order in which people will die. Yes, some parents will outlive their children, and that doesn't mean it feels okay. It is right. It is just how it is. So when you are grieving, be sad for the loss, but don't get caught up in all of the other stuff. Because no amount of analysing, talking about, thinking about, writing about will change that death happens. And I think that all these years on, I finally really get this, and at this stage feel a little more peaceful around that. So be kind to yourself during your grief, and just keep remembering you are always worth getting up and doing that next wave for. Thank you. See you next time.
Love to hear your thoughts about this show, or if there is something that you would love discussed on the Julie Cross podcast show, then please head over to iTunes and leave a review. Love to hear from you.